There's a huge amount. Then I wasn't come to town on Tuesday. Wednesday, right? No, let me take the kids.
Well, this is it.
How are you?
motion to approve those?
I move to approve.
Okay, Greg?
And I can second.
Okay, Jason, second. Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any-
abstain.
Okay, with Mr. Jensen abstaining. Anybody opposed? All right, motion passes. The October 2023 meeting was canceled. However, there is a short minutes document that I believe we have to approve as well. Is that correct, Shelley? Approved by motion?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I do not have that copy if that's.
Okay, it just said that it was canceled. Okay. So, announcements. Do we have any announcements from town staff?
The only announcements I have right now are that I'm passing John's text that he provided me about the lighting updates in the UDO to the department that does all of our internet outreach stuff and asking them for help with their graphics. Basically to make it nice and pretty.
Okay.
And I'll be doing that tomorrow. I believe that's all I have for you.
Those UDO changes go into effect on January 1. Is that for developments that are set to go under construction then or after, or
So,
how does that work?
the delay is actually intended so that we have some time to educate staff
Right.
about how to evaluate
Right.
everything. But what actually happens is anything that's under review before or approved before that date
Is
gets to go by
grandfathered?
the old.
Okay.
Now, we're already encouraging people to do their best to meet those rules now if they possibly can. Most of them are not expensive changes, so we're meeting some pretty decent responses from people.
But telling me anything under review or in the pipeline right now goes under the old rules.
Right.
Okay.
And anything that's existing. So if you hear from somebody that they might have been told their existing project has to meet the rules, that's unfortunately incorrect. If they make any changes or upgrades after January 1st, those new changes have to be.
Right. Right.
Okay, thank you, Shelley. All right, the next item is about Earthfest, and we have Lisa Rashke. Did I pronounce that correctly? Okay,
Close
the
enough,
special
yeah.
events coordinator.
4
for the town
consonants in a
of
row.
Apex.
Thank you guys so much for giving me an opportunity to speak. I do want to apologize in advance. I do have another meeting that I have to run. I'm the special events coordinator, and so there's a policy meeting going on for our new special events policy. So I do have Heather Cashwell here to answer any questions. So after I finish the presentation, I will zip off, but not because I'm not having a good time. I'm having a great time. But then if you have any follow-up, please do contact me. So I'm the special events coordinator for the town of Apex, and now Earthfest has fallen into my purview. And this year I kind of want to do something a little bit different. I really want to do some of the things we've done in the past, but I want to have some lasting effects. And some of the ideas that I have come up with is we're going to have a repair cafe. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not, but that will be held in the senior center in conjunction with, and that's where if you bring broken electronics or things that need to be mended, so instead of throwing things away, you can learn how to fix them. We'll have volunteers on hand from the repair cafe. We're also going to have a vendor marketplace, and we're going to have the usual suspects, but we'll also have mindful merchants, Engineers Without Borders. We're also going to have EnviroFlight. Hopefully, I was going to ask if you guys would have a table there as well. But what I really wanted to talk to you about is our no waste or low waste food truck rodeo, which is something I really want to start this year. And I think it's something we have so much waste at all of our events that we can't do that for every event, but there are items that we can take from this rodeo that we learn that we can start to implement throughout the year. And some of the things that I thought would be super interesting is I've been working with Heather, who has had experience with this before. We've already reached out to 3 food trucks, and we've been talking with Towards Zero Now and Compost Now. I do also have volunteers from the Apex Youth Council, and I've arranged for them to be volunteers that day to kind of help sort the waste, but also they'll have training sessions leading up to it. So it's kind of like a lasting impression from there. And the best way for this to work is that you want to have BPI certified products going in. I've already talked to the food trucks, and they would be happy to have those and to use those. When we're sorting those out, we can have no waste later later on. And so what I wanted to do is tell you about what I'm doing so far, see what you thought, and then if you had any projects that you wanted to bring, we're going to have performers. So we'll have Billy Jonas, who's sort of a musical artist who uses recycled instruments. Scrap Exchange will be out there, so you can make your own instrument. We'll have the Bubble Man and more. But I thought you guys may want to be involved. You may not. I mean, you will have a booth, but if you had a project in mind, well, I was kind of thinking we're going to have like the master gardeners out there answering questions. We're going to do native plants. We're going to try, maybe, I've already been talking to everybody, just have, rain barrels and composting. I know that sometimes HOAs don't like those, but maybe start that for that day. But just some items that we can move forward with. And so sort of doing something where it's kind of jump starting, where we're going next. So I just wanted to bring it to you guys now and see if you had any interest or you had projects in mind that you wanted to see happen this day, because I'm in the planning phases now and I'm open to suggestion, or if you want to be part of any things that I've already created or that we're moving forward with. So I just wanted to say that to you. Thank you for your time. Heather's here to answer any questions. Again, I'm Lisa Roschke, so if you have any questions, please do reach out, and thank you.
Thank you.
And also, I hope we'll see you at Earth Fest.
Heather, what is the date of it?
It's April 20th.
April 20th.
I know it's
Okay.
April.
So basically
It
Earth
is
Day.
April 20th from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. It's going to be here on town campus. And I know last year there was a rain out. We have contingency plans for that right now for all of our events. I do have indoor spaces for everybody, not the food trucks, but indoor spaces for everybody else. So let's say no rain, no rain, no rain, because I'm really excited about this Snow Waste Food Truck Rodeo. I think it could be something really exciting and fun. And I also think it could be something that jump starts moving forward. Like maybe, again, we have napkins or forks or spoons or whatever, but the idea that we start using food trucks that have this sensibility, the idea of low or no waste. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so what do you all think? Thoughts? I mean, so it kind of sounds like, well, we need to be figuring out what we would be doing at our booth. Would we just be standing there talking about the Environmental Advisory Board? Would we have a theme again that ties into this? I noticed that Shelley sent an email with some suggestions that we could use some of our yearly budget towards supporting one or more event item. What is our budget? Do we have one?
There is a small amount there's about $1,500, I think, set aside for educational and other stuff. That currently lives with the budget department, the budget group. There's a lot of leftovers. And there's a lot of handouts and swag that's left over from the last couple of them. So you're definitely welcome to hand those out as well. It's not a huge budget, but if you wanted to donate some of that to go towards something, you're welcome to do that. You don't have to by any means. It was just kind of something that popped up in conversations with Lisa as an option.
Okay. And so the assumption is that the Environmental Advisory Board would still do Peak Fest as well in September, probably?
That's up to you guys, probably, but entirely up to you.
Okay, so,
Isn't Peak Fest also in the spring now that it's
oh, is it in the
not
spring?
COVID?
Sorry,
I'm not
yes.
sure. Yeah,
It's
It'll
in
be in
May, so a
May.
couple
It'll
weeks.
be in May.
Yeah,
it was
So
just
they'll-
the COVID year that they were separate.
Yeah,
That's
last year they were a couple of weeks
Yeah.
apart, I think.
yeah,
So we should come up with some educational topic that we can do for both.
yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
And maybe if she's doing zero waste food truck rodeo, maybe the swag is those the utensils that can go in the dishwasher, but that are like travel utensils
Yeah.
that we did a few years ago.
Yeah, those
Yeah,
were
You guys
super
remember that?
popular.
They were very popular.
They're nice, but they're expensive.
Yeah, fair
They're
enough.
Very expensive.
That's fair.
So one thing she came up with, if you have some of those already, you can definitely hand those out at that group, that's not a problem. But one option that Lisa gave me was that she's gonna be working with, a group called, hold on, I'm trying to find it, Towards Zero Now and Compost Now. And they they can sell the BPI free, recyclable, compostable utensils and plates, and those can all be put in the composting bin, just regular composted, not special facility composted. and they will sell those to the town at a very reduced price. It's something like 10 cents a plate or something. Wow. So if y'all wanted to put money towards that, that was one thought that she had, was that the town might actually purchase all the plates and all of the utensils for that and hand them out to the food trucks and say, hey, you're gonna use these instead of using the styrofoam that
Right.
you normally use.
Right.
So that's one option. She also had a bunch of other suggestions about you could even just help people, you know, take shifts helping people figure out where to put their waste, because one of the biggest problems is always people
Sure.
don't actually know what bucket they're supposed to put their stuff into. And I mean, I don't know if you've attended any like the Eno Fest or anything like that, but they've been attempting to reduce waste for a long time. And they always end up with a ton of stuff in the trash bags that shouldn't be in the trash bags.
We did the waste recycling thing one year. I think the first year we did,
Yeah.
That's right.
and the kids seemed to enjoy it. I'm not sure the parents did.
Well, this would be more along the lines of hanging out near the bins, possibly,
Right.
helping people out if they
Right.
have questions. But you're also welcome to do your own thing. We're not trying to push here, we're just trying to give you options.
Right. Right.
And it doesn't have to be a decision that you make today necessarily. We just wanted to bring it up nice and early so everybody has the opportunity to kind of think it through.
And the recycling thing is actually really good, because there's been, I've seen a lot of confusion with several people on what, you know, waste industries or GFI actually takes versus what's printable and out there that they really do take. So, when some things are as simple as, you know, the screw-on lid, some you leave on there, some you don't leave on there. But like, I think that's a good idea. You know?
Yeah, that was actually, I thought that was a pretty fun thing, and you did get to interact with a lot of different people doing that. The only thing about that is I think Megan was the one who had the different trash cans, and they may be in the storage, stormwater storage area. We need somebody to bring different recyclable and trash items, so we had those, if you all wanted to do that. It does sort of fit in.
Sorry, I probably don't even need them. Whoa, that's loud. I was going to tell you, we definitely can provide all of the recycling and composting bins that day for the event, and also do the education about what goes where, how to sort, because you're right, recycling is confusing. Composting, a lot of people don't necessarily have experience with. I think that's the sort of goal, to work with these food trucks to orient themselves to say, we are going to be low waste, so leave all of your single-use items that there's no recyclable or compostable option at home. We're going to try to streamline the options for them. And that's the concept of providing the BPI certified compostables, so that we know they're accepted in the compost facilities around here, and kind of take the guesswork out of it. But we can definitely set up all of the bins, all the education, the science, and all that stuff. So, or whatever is helpful. And so I think that was some of the things that Lisa was saying is, you know, options are totally open to this board about how you want to be involved, or is it your own booth, or is it working with some of the sorting stations to help people sort their waste, or does it look like something else? So I think that's her goal, is to provide all of the compostables for the food trucks, and we'll find a way to fund that.
This was more so a game that was for kids.
Oh.
To help educate. It was like to get them to come stop.
I'm sorry, I totally misunderstood that. Do we have that? That would be fun.
Both options, right?
Yeah.
And maybe there's a way to link them together.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That would be great.
Maybe have some of like the items that you are saying at this particular festival, what do you do with?
Yeah, that's a great
That
idea.
would be a great way to do it.
Mm-hmm. And we will, I'm with Public Works, and we'll have a booth out there. I'm hoping we'll be kind of close to you all, but we can definitely see what we have in terms of games or activities that we could bring out there and have that you could run, or, you know, we could have in that area for whoever wants to participate. That's a good idea. I like that game. And if we need prizes, let me know.
So what do
There's,
you?
coming up in the near future, I think within the next 10 years, it's going to be waste to energy facility possibility. And I think it'd be something to try to educate people on something like that, as to the fact that when you recycle your plastic bottles and stuff, something like 85% of it doesn't get recycled in actuality. So if you went to waste to energy, you can generate for Wake County 80 megawatts of electricity. That's large. And the EPA looks at waste to energy above landfills, and our landfill is getting up there. So I guess what I'm thinking of is somehow to try to educate people so that there's a push onto the county side of it to move. I mean, they're moving at snail's pace right now, and 2035 is coming up when they have to do something. Just, that's my thought.
Is that when 2035 is when the landfill is?
2035 was projected, and I think it's more like 2040 now, but it depends on how many people come here and how successfully we are at successful at getting true recycling. We don't really have true recycling.
Yeah, maybe one of the ways we can tie in an educational component with being helpful to the event is to talk about how not everything gets recycled and how it's actually way better to reuse than to recycle, and to like explain why you should have your own water bottle rather than saying, well, I'm going to put this one in the recycling. Maybe that's a way to tie it together.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
And I feel like that also, a lot of kids come to Earth Fest, and they're the best listeners on those kinds of things and the easiest ones to convert.
And Wake County Solid Waste will be there with a booth as well. And we can get that message to them that if that's something that you'd like for them to highlight, what's after the landfill. They're doing a lot of studies right now about what's next in terms of, nothing's decided, but it's going under study. Will it be waste to energy, of what type? That they could bring that into that booth if you think that'd be a helpful educational piece for them.
I think it would be.
And many people might not even know when the landfill is scheduled to
Right.
fill. I mean, like,
Right.
they might not even know where their waste is going.
Yes.
Yeah.
They do landfill tours. Everyone should see one.
Yeah.
Let's do a field trip if you haven't.
But that could be a good educational topic for us for the spring.
They had a good video out a couple of years ago that was really nice.
Covanta has a really good one, and I think Wheel of Beta, or whatever they're called, has the same thing. At least it shows all the cycle of the process for waste to energy. And the big problem that they seem to come up against is that 30 or 40 years ago, waste to energy was pouring garbage into the atmosphere. And today they scrub theirs as clean as a coal-fired power plant, if not cleaner.
Yeah.
So that's the one downside. Plus, of course, you're producing carbon dioxide, but you're eliminating the methane cycle, which means that net-wise, you're ahead of the game.
Okay, so is everybody good on this as an education topic that we can sort of develop?
I think we need to.
I just had an alternative idea. I know in the past we've given out plants. So if we think about like composting and that cycle of diverting from the landfill and other ways to create compost and creating that stuff for plants to grow, if we want to kind of tie it into things that we've given out in the past.
Yeah,
That's a good idea.
that's a good idea.
Life cycle.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, well, perhaps
great.
we can explore this a little bit more at future meetings, and then I would imagine the folks that are continuing on for sure in January can carry it forward. Okay, excellent. Thank you. All right. Next item, we have a rezoning case review, Castleberry Reserve PUD amendment.
These are the old ones. Yeah, these are the old ones.
Hey, good evening. Matthew Carpenter with Parker Poe, 301 Fayetteville Street. Here this evening on behalf of the developer, Inspire Commercial. And the case probably sounds familiar, and that's because you did hear it at an EAB meeting in January of this year. And that was the Castleberry Reserve PUD that was ultimately approved by council on September 12th. And so there were a lot of recommendations in the January meeting. Many of those were incorporated into the conditions of the case before it was approved in September. And so the goal of this amendment is to not change any of those conditions, but to add 13 acres of property to the PUD. So we're not asking for any more density. We're not changing or removing any conditions, just adding a parcel And thanks, Shelley, for putting it on the screen. The parcel that's labeled new project parcel here, it wasn't part of the original assemblage when we filed earlier this year. But as the case progressed and we got closer towards a vote, the developer got that parcel under control too. You know, obviously, if we could, we would have included it before. But we're trying to add it to the case now, and it really makes a lot of sense where it is. It's 13 acres. It's mostly open. There are some trees there, and the plan for it is really only to put a few units in the northern section there. The vast majority of it will stay wooded with a small stormwater pond. So the 450-foot buffer that was recommended at the January EAB meeting for the game lands to the south, we did include that before the case was adopted by council. And so that buffer will extend across the Johnson property, which is the new 13-acre piece that we're adding. And then a couple of other conditions that we also added towards the end of that case, a commitment to 25% of preserving 25% of the existing tree canopy, and then also to having 20 homes pre-configured with solar. So we made both of those all three of those commitments with the buffer, sort of late in the game. So I'm not sure if you all saw those, but we are proposing to keep all those and apply them to this property too when it's added to the PUD. And so I think there are 12 or 13 total environmental conditions we have in our application. And again, we're not proposing to alter any of those, but did want to provide you an update on the case. The density came down a bit too. I think in January when we were here last, it was 2 units an acre, and what was ultimately adopted was 1.65. So we think comprehensively we've got a good case with good existing zoning that was approved in September, and are not trying to meddle with that, just add this additional property so that it can be brought in our subdivision plans and added, because I think it makes a more cohesive plan with it. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Can you tell us you just said you made a solar agreement. Is it a solar conduit agreement, or the homes are outfitted with the solar panels?
Yeah, there are 2 separate commitments. So there's 20 of the homes will be pre-configured with solar panels, and then the rest will have solar conduit.
All the rest?
Yes.
How many homes are we talking about? I guess on the original, I'm not sure how many y'all were talking about.
Right. So the case that was approved in September was 90 acres. And when we were here last, we were proposing 2 units an acre, which would have been 180 homes. That per acre density was reduced down to 1.65. With the total acreage with this amendment, it'd be 103 acres or so. And so we've capped it at 170 homes. So, it's still that same per acre density that was approved in September. But we're adding acreage, which does allow additional units in total. So,
with the additional houses, would it be possible maybe to add at least one more pet station?
Yeah, I don't think that would be an issue. Yeah, for a couple of.
Sorry, what'd you say? Add one more what?
Pet station. Right now they've committed to, we're going to have 4. And I'm thinking with that many homes that they may need one more.
Yep.
Did you commit in any way to adding 220, 240 outlets in the garages?
Yes, I believe that condition is in there. Let's see. I thought it was. Let me check up here. I may be mixing cases in my mind here.
It's not showing up in the environmental stuff.
Okay, well, that must not have been included in the approved case. That's correct.
I'd like to recommend that be put in. It's a recommendation.
Okay. Now that would just be for the 13 additional acres, though, I think.
No, this is a rezoning.
For 13 acres.
It applies to everything.
For 13 acres.
Well, so you're both correct. in different ways. If this was purely just an addition and the existing site wasn't also being rezoned to go with it, then it would only be for the 13 acres. However, this project is actually being fully rezoned, all of the acreage together, so it would impact any new lot or any lot.
Any lot. I would hope you'd do that. I mean, it's
Makes sense.
it's not a big expense. It's far less than pre-wiring for solar.
Right.
It's a great selling point because we are going to be in EVs, and these are going to be houses that are going to last for hundreds of years, right?
Right.
And and it's a great selling point. I hope you guys can
Yeah,
commit to
it's
that.
worth considering.
Others have done that.
Yeah, I'm happy to pass it on, and I don't know that it was specifically excluded. We were just focusing on all these other
It might have
commitments.
been
So,
missed.
yeah.
How does,
I'm sorry, just
No.
as a reminder, since that's something that's internal to the structure, that's not something that planning can require, and that's not something that building inspections can require due to state.
But if they can commit to it, I would think.
Commit to it, I
and-
would say that there's nothing that staff can do to hold them to it, that's all.
But I have trouble with understanding that because we do electrical inspections throughout.
The state legislature about a year ago passed changes to the general statutes that said that nothing can be required over and above the minimum for, I'm trying to remember the language, but the minimum for building code. And that you cannot hold up COs for anything over and above the minimum.
And that's not required yet.
I understand that, but we can request. Request is not required.
And I do not want to stand in the way of you requesting, I just wanted to make it clear that it's not something that staff can enforce.
I do understand.
We may have had this conversation in January, which is
I think-
why it was
Sounds
like,
like it.
We're back at it once again. I think we ended up probably not asking in January, and now it's November and we're asking. At least I am. I'd appreciate that.
okay, yeah, well, I'm happy to pass it on.
What does this addition of the 13 acres do for the 150-yard buffer with the Army Corps land?
The buffer, shall I have the PUD plan? The 450-foot buffer, yeah, there it is. You can see on the right side of your screen there, it will continue to the edge of the easternmost property line of that parcel. So it really takes up the majority of that parcel.
Okay, okay.
And this is looking at the new parcel.
Yes, that right where Shelley's mouse just was. Yeah. So that piece wasn't in the case before, and now it is.
Okay. It helps I appreciate Shelley, moving the cursor, that was helpful.
So it looks like most of that parcel is in farmland or has been cleared a while ago.
Right.
And first of all, I really appreciate this buffer. I think that's going to be very helpful because they do hunt on that land. People do hunt on that core land. So if it's going to be RCA, are you going to plant it or just let ecological succession take over, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the way that the 450-foot buffer is written is that it will be undisturbed, absent, a couple. I think we wrote it so that we could have maybe a walking trail through there. I think Councilmember Gant recommended that there could be some sort of low intensity recreational uses through there without really benches or anything, but just trails. And so the goal was for it to be undisturbed because most of the 450-foot buffer off of the Johnson property is wooded. And so that was the goal there. I mean, I think we're open to planting some of it if that would help. But I think the intent was for it to be undisturbed.
Yeah,
So.
and that is a good policy if you have an intact forested area that's already full of mature native plants, but this being an open space that's not going to be actively managed in any way. I mean, like the places in the Piedmont want to be trees. Unfortunately, in this area, we do have a lot of non-native trees that come in first because they do grow so aggressively. So my concern is that by just being hands-off, you're gonna end up with that kind of vegetation that's then gonna try and spread off the core land and that kind of thing. So I think either planting it with native things or perhaps including some mechanism in the covenants to fund invasive species monitoring and removal until that area becomes a mature forest might be a good thing, and you will get something that's more in the spirit of what an RCA is trying to be.
Right. Yeah, and I'm happy to discuss options with staff about maintaining that area, but I don't know that we can commit to any sort of planting there right now, just because so we're doing this concurrently with our subdivision plans, and so they're going through review right now too, and so I'd have to talk to the civil about what the plans are for that area. I know the 450-foot buffer is undisturbed, and then just above it is a planned stormwater pond. So I don't know what impact that has on that area either. So maybe, yeah, okay. I think it's in the white area there. They may be locating a stormwater pond. So.
If you could commit to replanting it with native type species, I know we always seem to ask for 2.5-inch caliper. It doesn't have to be that by any means. It can be basically almost seedlings. Mm-hmm. My son's Boy Cub Scout group planted a whole bunch of seedlings, and I go driving by it now on 64, and they're huge trees. So it'd be a way of getting a whole lot more trees for not much money. I think you're the expert in that. I'm not. Tell me I'm wrong.
No, I mean, so I guess that depends on that's why I think it might be worthwhile to really sort of think through what is the end goal? Like, what do you want that to look like? You could plant trees, but if you wanted to approximate it to be a forest, you're gonna need different canopy layers, right? And so if you just plant trees, we'll see what you get in the subcanopy once they grow.
Oh, I agree, a variety, but I was just thinking trees.
Yeah.
In terms of getting that upper canopy.
Yeah, I mean, planting more would certainly compensate for any mortality that happened before they, grew to maturity, especially if you aren't tending them.
I was just thinking 2.5 caliber trees are expensive to buy and to plant.
Yeah, Jason, do you have any thoughts?
I agree with both of you. I do think that there needs to be a sub-canopy layer to put in because a lot of the ligustrums and stuff are going to just go in there, and andinas. So anything a bird's going to drop in there is going to start to sprout. So I'm trying to think of any other suggestions that I place in there. It's always good to put in food for native habitats and things in there, and since that's pushed right against that area, you're going to have lots of deer and other wildlife coming in. That's going to disrupt the residents. They're not going to want their landscaping eaten by deer. So if you can provide food sources there, then it's more likely they will stay in that area and not go into the actual neighborhood.
Right.
Yeah,
so
that's a good point. So,
okay.
You want to make a suggestion or number of trees, or what do you think? Just a revegetation plan be developed?
Get out of the aerial, Shelley, so we can see.
Yeah.
There is some tree cover on the western side there. Yeah, but no.
Thank you for doing the solar. That does not go unnoticed.
Yeah, no, it was a good commitment. I was somewhat surprised the developer was willing to do it too. So,
but very much appreciated.
Yeah.
It's more than 10%, which was pulling eye teeth before.
Right.
You get that percentage.
just want to offer a suggestion. Sometimes we ask developers to make donations to local nonprofits that's focused on tree replanting in the Wake area. Potentially the developer here can collaborate with one of those nonprofits, you know, to basically provide the acreage for tree planting, because you know it's always hard to find the land to plant the trees, right? If there's an opportunity to use some of this land, you know, potentially for that purpose, that might work, you know, basically to both benefits.
Yeah, that's an excellent
That's a good idea.
suggestion.
Yeah, that's really
Yeah,
good.
I mean, this would be a place, if you needed to plant trees, this would be a good place for that.
And if they're able to collaborate with a nonprofit like that, we wouldn't have to set particular, you know, standards of you need to plant X number of trees. We just say, please work with a conservation group. That's an excellent suggestion.
Yeah, that's a creative idea, and we're happy to talk about it. I think we just need to, I need to discuss with the developer how the HOA is going to work and how that would operate, you know, since it would probably be HOA land and common area. So having another group come in and use it.
What particular area are we talking about replanting in this, in this new project parcel? I mean, I know it's not the whole section, so it's.
The southern 450 feet.
Right. It's quite a bit of area there.
Yeah, I think my primary concern is, you know, keeping a control on the invasive species that may come in. Because I know in my neighborhood, there is a plot of land that does have some of these trees, and now they try and come into our stormwater area, which causes a little bit of trouble.
Right.
So, other maintenance issues.
Yeah. It's surprising where things will grow.
Yeah, well, they'll grow anywhere, unfortunately. So that's the approximate area.
Okay.
So it's a pretty large.
Yeah, it's a large area.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, yeah, I would recommend that the goal be to maintain, you know, keep those non-native aggressive things at bay. And that, you know, that sort of goes along with what's going on in the core land as well.
And if y'all do plan on putting trails and stuff in that area, more native plants and trees are going to bring in more wildlife, so it'll pull people out there to actually experience that.
Right.
So is this to become an RCA area? Is that what it's?
Yes, it's RCA and or the 450 foot undisturbed buffer that was recommended in the previous case that will be applied to this property. So
I'm curious how you maintain an RCA area that's just all by hand. That the HOAs will maintain this whole area.
yeah, so the wooded area will be undisturbed, and then it'll probably all be HOA common area. But then for the open area, I think, you know, this is good to have the discussion of what that's going to look like and how it's going to be maintained. And I don't know the breakdown of exactly what's considered RCA and what's not. You know, it may be because it's open that not all of it can be. I can't.
It would depend on whether you can commit to meeting the RCA planting standard.
Right.
Ordinance, which does allow for smaller trees, but not extremely small. On the other hand, you could add a PUD condition to adjust that planting standard and still have it count. That would have to be something staff would have to discuss a little more closely with you. And that planting standard is fairly robust, but does not take shrubs into consideration. It's only for the different canopy levels of trees. And I agree with Suzanne that shrubs need to be a part of that, especially
Right. Would some sort of meadow be an option there? I mean, maybe less maintenance, and you know, I don't know if that would help, but
there's a company, so Project Panda does what are called Piedmont Prairies now.
Right.
They just launched this in the last year, and I have a rezoning going to town council after Thanksgiving that's offering that as an option. and for it to be counted towards their RCA. So if you decide you want to add that as a rezoning condition, I suggest talking to staff about it. It would need to be something that would be maintained, however, and you can
Right.
project or legal limb to do that. We took meadows out of the RCA category about 7 years ago because nobody was maintaining them. They were
Right.
either mowing them every week or they were never ever mowing them. They became forest, which
Right. And my thought is to prevent, constant mowing like is probably happening out there now, but, not necessarily plant the entire thing into a new forest. So,
Yeah, I
just a
mean,
thought.
over, decades, it's gonna wanna be forest. I
Right.
mean, like that,
Over the couple hundred years,
yeah.
houses will be here.
are gonna be there.
That's right.
And the natural succession would start out as a grassland
It
type
would, yeah.
area.
Mhm.
The concern that we have is the invasives moving in because we have so many landscaped areas in this
Right.
area that, you can buy a Nandina and plant it in your yard and it looks beautiful, but then all the berries are eaten by birds and
Drop them right here. Yeah.
Yeah, and the concept of a Piedmont prairie is a somewhat controversial one in the ecological community about what exactly that did look like and how it was maintained. So, yeah, could phase it towards forest. I mean, early on, it could be a combination of things with the ultimate goal being multi-strata canopy and understory.
Yeah, so I mean, you could put in a few trees here and there, some shrubs here and there, and then plant the rest out with a meadow grassland type
Right.
thing. So it's sort of mid-succession. As those grow up, the meadow and stuff is going to die out, and then
Right.
other native shrubs and stuff will start moving in. So.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so we have the addition, or I'm sorry, does anybody else have any questions? Okay, so we have the zoning conditions that he previously showed with the addition of a pet station plus a recommendation to install the 220, 240 plugs. Anything, and then consideration of what this area will be.
Right.
Anything else? Is there a motion to approve?
Can we get that written down, so we can sort of see the verbiage? Particularly on the last one.
Well, that's not.
And that area is to be considered like
I understand.
a re-landscaped RCA area.
could you repeat the last one for me?
Um,
I know what we talked about, but I'm not certain how you summarized it.
Well, let's see.
You could almost use goal 10 of our zoning conditions with option 10.3 in A, where it says the project shall increase biodiversity within perimeter buffers, common owned open space, and other landscape areas. We could start there and sort of add the other asks that we're sort of putting in there.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Thank you, Adam.
I don't know if we want to set a percentage yet of species selected, but we could sort of use that as a starting point and then.
Well, the minimum percentage of species is based off of whether it be native or not, so.
Yeah.
In that area, 100% would be native. Because the whole goal is to keep invasives
Just
that way.
make that native, yeah.
This is the one that you don't have?
10.3.
Yeah, 10 point.
That's not the 10.3
That's
that
not,
I'm reading.
that's not the one.
The project shall increase biodiversity within perimeter buffers, common owned open space and other landscape areas by providing a variety of native and adaptive species for the canopy, understory, and shrub levels. A minimum of 100% of the species shall be native or native to North Carolina.
It's page 37 of 40 in the PUD application.
Yeah, or 7 of 10. Yeah, PDF is, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Can we specify, Shelley, that that's in the unforested section? That way we're not, trying to plant in the forested section.
Could you remove adaptive from that? I don't think we want, I don't think the intent is for adaptive species to be in there, correct?
Yeah.
The only reason we left adaptive in there originally is because occasionally you'll find something that does well but is not invasive in any way, but still benefits or is native slightly outside of our area. But I've already taken it out. I'm happy to take it out.
And the requirement of a minimum of 100% of species selected shall be native or native to North Carolina just makes the adaptive species irrelevant.
Was that representative of the residential and commercial? Just the one you referenced was the commercial.
What do you mean?
On the, was it the 10 point?
In the commercial section, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And then what do you all think about tacking on, one of the other ones had language in there about the HOA maintaining it, like a requirement.
What type of maintenance would you suggest? Invasive
Yeah.
monitoring is what
Invasive
you were
monitoring and removal.
It's an ask. We can put it in there. I don't want the whole thing to go away
Right.
just because of that.
Yeah,
So I would suggest that it would be a separate ask
okay.
if you're gonna do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good idea. It's a pretty heavy lift for an HOA, and I think,
So that the cost of that's going to, from an HOA standpoint,
Yeah.
even with, what was it, 100, how many, say 170 lots?
right,
170
that's
homes?
exactly right.
That's an awful lot.
That, the maintenance, yeah.
That's pretty high. That's gonna be pretty high to keep up with.
So
Yeah.
with plantings like this, Shelley, is there any kind of like performance guarantee or like monitoring period to ensure that?
Yes, generally speaking, they're installed, from fall until very early spring. So we only allow plantings from September until, and we're thinking about changing that because September's been so hot. But September until the 1st of April. And then there are periodic inspections taken and carried out by the zoning compliance officers, so the enforcement arm of the planning department. And essentially, if, depending on the type of planting that is happening, so if we're looking at seedlings, for example, that are overplanted based on what will survive, then we would look at whether or not large swaths have died off or been eaten, or things like that, and then require the HOA or the developer to replace them. If we're talking about large trees in the 2.5-inch caliber or thereabouts range, even smaller to some degree, then they would have to replace individual plants as they die off. And then the HOA is required to, there's a section that basically says that the property owner has to maintain it, and if anything significant dies off after that, after it's turned over to the HOA, it has to be replaced. Now, that's up to a certain point. Once it starts looking like a truly natural area, things are going to die off, and that's to be expected. And then those trees or shrubs are cut and where they stand, and the wood from them is dropped in place. And that's only done if it's considered to be a danger to the houses or residents nearby.
Okay.
Otherwise, if it's pretty deep in the woods or significantly far from a property or a fence, then we just we tell them to leave it alone.
Okay.
One thing this condition does not state is what type of plantings you would like. If that's something that you want to be determined by working with staff, then I would suggest having that phrase in here, say to be determined in a conversation with staff and the developer, or if you want it to be a full mixture of varying species of trees and shrubs, then I'd suggest specifying that as well. I know we've talked about options, and I don't think I have a clear answer from that conversation. Or if you want it to be a meadow or some in between thereabouts.
I think we've thrown out the meadow with this.
I don't want to get into that controversy.
Yeah.
There are also reforestation
Yes.
seed mixes that can be used and maybe supplemented with bare root seedlings and things like that that can be obtained inexpensively from the Forest Service, those kinds of things.
I mean, I'm a little hesitant to prescribe anything because, we don't know the soils, we don't know what will be best for this particular plot of land.
Ideally, you would look at the forest and see what's in there, and that's just extend that essentially.
I think it'd be better for the staff and the developer to get together and figure out what.
I think that makes sense too. That way we're not stuck into something,
Wouldn't a town standard just automatically?
There would have to be language in here that would allow it to vary from, or language in what's adopted by the applicant that would allow it to vary from the town standards based on what's found on site. Otherwise, yes, the town standards would apply. The RCA planting section though does allow for smaller landscaping that are typical parking lot or buffer tree.
Just a random question about how many square feet are we talking about in this buffer, this area, ballpark?
That's a good question. I want to say it's like 10 or 15 acres. That's just going from memory, but I don't know the exact number off the top of my head. But it is a big area, and it was helpful when committing to the tree canopy condition too, because we want to save a lot of the best trees are in that buffer. So that was helpful, and I think it's a sort of a natural way to go about it. So.
So are we,
I think I can get you a rough estimate.
I will move to approve the recommendations.
thank you. Katie moves to approve. Okay.
Second.
Second, Craig. Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion carries unanimously.
Thank you all.
So much for your
Thank
time
you.
tonight.
Thank you.
Alright. Okay, last thing, open discussion. Does anybody have any items for open discussion?
If no one on the board does, I wanted to bring up next month's meeting. It's gonna be on the 21st, which is very shortly before Christmas. Last year, maybe it was the year before, we had a little difficulty getting a quorum. If that's going to be difficult this time, I'd suggest canceling the meeting ahead of time. If people don't know yet, that's fine too. I would just like to request that you let us know as soon as possible. You can email Jessica and me, and we can coordinate that with Alan and figure out if we'll have a quorum that night or not. If you are really and truly uncertain, but you're leaning towards you might not be able to, I would just recommend saying that you're not gonna be able to make it. I don't want anybody, I want to avoid a situation where some people feel like they have to be here that night and it makes things difficult for them. And then they show up and they find out that we don't have a quorum and it increases the fine.
I know that I cannot be here.
And Patrick cannot be here.
I can.
Yeah, I can be.
As far as I know.
As far as I know, I can as well.
I plan to.
Okay, you have quorum then.
Okay. All right, well, yes.
I might be counting on you.
You know I don't have a life.
Right? It'll be your life is right here.
That's right. This is my life.
That's right.
So if anybody's plans change, let Shelley know as soon as possible. The only other thing I had that I didn't get a chance to bring up last time is I received an email from a resident encouraging the use of electric leaf blowers. And they were requesting that the town in their maintenance activities of their properties, they were wondering if that would be possible and if the town had ever thought about doing such a thing.
That is an excellent question.
We actually have. So the Public Works Department is switching over to more and more electrical gear. Sometimes it's not feasible or practical because of the gear being out in the field for a day on end, and the requirement to carry additional batteries may not always be conducive to the activity, but it's definitely something that is front and center for the team, and where possible we are adopting electrical like mowers and things like that. So.
Great.
Battery power.
That's a great answer.
Battery power, not.
Battery power, yes, yes. Not a cord,
Long electric cord.
A lot of cords.
Okay, excellent.
Also, it'd be nice to see people using, or the commercial guys using leaf vacs instead of blowers to the extent possible. It's a much cleaner way to take care of the mess.
So instead of vacuuming.
A big leaf vacs that they can just drive over and it just sucks up the leaves.
Okay.
And it compresses them into a nice small bundle.
And then are they typically composted, or what happens to them after that?
You know, that's a good question. Typically, the stuff that I've seen are not for commercial, it's mostly for people.
What does the town use when they come by and
What?
suck up? What does the town do with their leaves when they come by and suck them up off the curb line?
They go to the
Compost.
the dump up off of, just south of, where, 540 is. Yes, thank you, that, the C&D landfill.
Don't they compost those, don't they? I thought,
We do not have a composting facility.
I thought we contracted with,
We contract with Holly Springs, I believe.
do they compost then? I thought we contracted with the composter.
Like, yeah, we compost it, yeah. We actually right now have multiple outlets for our leaf waste, but it is getting composted, whether it's going to McGill composting. There are some times where we have to take loads to the C&D landfill, but the majority of it is composted, whether it's wood chips or leaves or all that stuff.
Thanks, Heather.
Excellent. Yeah.
I think the director actually talked about that last year when he came in from Holly Springs.
Yeah.
He came from Holly Springs back to Apex, or to Apex, and discussed that with us. So
Yes.
I knew that new lay down yard over there off of US 1
Yeah, right.
was
and
a small
that's-
area that they were attempting to get.
And the markets have really shifted and changed around, for some of those outlets. And so that's one thing that we're looking at is that sort of that long-term sustainable management, with shorter hauling distances and knowing that it's getting composted and that type of thing. So we're evaluating options as some of those, other private businesses are hit or miss sometimes.
I would suggest something more radical and leave the leaves be.
Yes.
That's what I do.
And grass.
And no, I'm not lazy. I actually want to help nature.
Yeah.
I do it half and half.
Oh, okay.
I mean, and it's too bad we don't have a fall outreach opportunity, because
Yeah.
that would be a great place to promote such a thing. Okay.
I do have one thing to bring up, particularly since we may not be meeting next month. We probably need to start thinking about next year and what we're wanting to accomplish or go after or look into. I think the town council has been sort of pushing us to look at the UDO and see if there's anything that we can do to change the UDO to make it more environmentally friendly, or adopt some of our recommendations and put them in there, or maybe come up with something completely different. So I think we all need to start thinking about that. Those who are still going to be here next year.
So that'll be John, Sean, Adam, Bill, and Jason, for sure.
For sure, yeah. So
that's a good suggestion.
And if I may just offer a little bit of context to that request, right? So what we just went through with the developer, or the developer's representative, we find ourselves negotiating these things kind of one development at a time, right? But we have kind of a set of standard asks that's kind of resurfaced time and time again, right? And so can we make everybody's life a little bit more sane by adopting some of those requirements as standards in our UDO, so that we don't have to go through a line by line, negotiation every single time that a new rezoning or development request comes up, right? So that's really the backdrop of that request.
Well, that's how that lighting UDO change that we recommended started. It didn't end up like that, but more
and so even things like our affordable housing policy is kind of the same concept, right? Like instead of having a one-off negotiation every single time that something comes through, right? Can we kind of standardize the process, right, to give a little bit more predictability to our development community, but also kind of take some of the variability out of it, right, and the perceived just or unjust unequal treatment between certain developments and so forth, right? So by putting some of these requirements in the UDO, we just make it much more predictable, more standard, more uniformly applied to everybody, right? So that's kind of the objective here: give a little bit more transparency to everybody out there.
All right.
The only thing I'd like to add, I mean, I don't know if I'm asked to come back again for another term or is the timing of the submittals or to the EAB as far as our review of them. It would be ideal to have, even if it's some sort of conceptual site plan to look at versus just a boundary and a topo, you know, where you can kind of see where play lawns or playgrounds or dog parks or common open space areas will be versus we recommend this and then all of a sudden they got an enormous dog park or no dog park at all, you know, or a playground and we do not request the simple requirements of what they actually are planning for the site. I have some of the ones that have come in my term, they've been, I feel like, a little premature.
They've been all over the map, yeah.
Yeah.
There've been some that are fairly complete and some that are just an outline of the property.
You know, so just a boundary of it is hard to.
You're right.
To give recommendations when you don't know what you're giving general recommendations, not specific recommendations of what that site really is going to contain.
Ellie, didn't we ask for a second EAB review because for that exact reason where we have one early in the process and then one later, or was that just community outreach, like the neighborhood sessions?
The UDO was amended to add a second neighborhood meeting.
It was just a neighborhood meeting? All right.
There might have been some discussion around adding a second EAB meeting. I'm not certain if I'm remembering correctly or not about that. I do know that we've talked about requesting sketch plans for these meetings before, when the plans, previously, when you all were meeting with people before they had submitted their rezonings.
Yeah.
And the idea about changing the timing to make it after the submittal came through was so that you all received everything that staff is receiving. As you can tell, there's not a whole lot of difference between what we receive and what you all do. In order to minimize the impact and the delay on timing for the developer, we have encouraged them to come before you the first month after they submit. So it might be a conversation that staff and the council could have about looking into possibly having them come to you later, after they've already received a round of comments from staff. It would definitely mean at least 1 month delay on their rezoning petitions, however, and that's regardless of the kind of zoning motion. So that's something to keep in mind as well, because unfortunately the old adage, time is money, does definitely apply to real estate development.
Time is, yeah, absolutely, time is money, but if it's known up front, you know, hey, we've got to address this, and you know, you can put all that into play with, then it's the developer's responsibility to set up the closing. That way where you're not having to pay an interest on something when you don't necessarily have bought it yet.
I do like the staff notes when we have gotten them. They've been very informative and
unfortunately, your meeting is the day that we meet with, every single month is the day that we meet with the applicants. So we don't necessarily, we'll typically have the comment letters ready for Monday, but this particular month we didn't because the review cycle was so short because of Thanksgiving. So I can also make sure that we do a better job of making sure you all get the comment letters that we send out to the board member or to the applicants with each set of submittals. I'll make that an item on my list.
And wait, are those the TRC comments that, okay, that's what we're talking, okay.
Yeah, occasionally, occasionally, and I think that this one I may have missed that they didn't cover.
That would be good, because then you can piggyback on some of the comments that staff makes
I agree, they are.
with the site plan.
The planners are trying to do a better job of looking at the site with the information that we have, which is just basically background information that we know from other projects in similar locations, and making environmental recommendations. You may remember that not last month, but the month before, the Hatcher property came in, and Horton Road came in, and they already had a list of things that I had recommended that they adopt based on their site, and that seemed to be a much more streamlined process for y'all. So I can try to work with the other planners to see if that's something that we can work on getting included. That way they have a chance, the applicants have a chance to look at it, think about some of those things up front, see what they can commit to, and then you all also have that list to look at and see if there's something else you want to add on top of that. If that's what you want. If you would rather we leave it alone and you have the conditions entirely, we're fine with that too.
I found it helpful.
Yeah.
I'll say, I think it'd be better served if you do it like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, knowing what they've got a better view of what they're wanting to do with their property, even if they haven't finalized things yet. So if you know, they can go through the recommendations that we've got, and they can agree to stuff, and that would be helpful to us and figuring out what we want to do.
If that doesn't change the workload of the planners. I mean, like, the you know, the point, one of the points of having like the checklist was to like not, you know, make a whole bunch of extra work for you all.
That's not really going well, I don't think.
We found some extra
Yeah,
time.
they're
I mean,
You find that extra time, you let me know where that is. I'll think so too.
I don't know that I can put that in a bottle, even if and hand it out, even if I could. That's like sanity. I'm always to ask for that in the grocery store every year, and we've never been able to find anybody who sells it. But that's I would have to talk to the other planners and see what their workloads look like. It was not that much more difficult for me to do it, but I'm very familiar with the checklist and everything. So I don't know what their response would be, but I can definitely bring it up with them and have it as a conversation. Probably won't come up until after Thanksgiving, just to be completely frank, and we can see if that's something that we can add in there. The checklist does definitely help by giving us the language and everything that's fairly consistent.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
A motion.
All right, Jason, is there a
Second.
Katie, second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion adjourned. Thank you, everybody.